Welcome to the Crypto Gaming Institute podcast. My name is Ben, your host, and today we have the one, the only, Mr. Nate Hamilton. What's going on, Nate? How you doing?
Howdy. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you are one of the big shots over at Moonbeam Moonriver, that whole ecosystem. Super excited to get to chat with you today because I love what y'all are doing, and I'm excited to kind of dig into it. But before we really dive into the different projects, I would love to really get an understanding of your own story of your journey, your story of like how you really got to the place that you are now.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I wouldn't call myself a big shot, but it's always nice to hear people think I'm a big shot in some way, shape, or form. So like my crypto story, my background, I was in just the tech space for, I don't know, 8 to 10 years before kind of making the switch over. And I was kind of in more like business development and sales roles and just a traditional Web2 tech space on the communications and networking side of tech. And I kind of got to this point, and I think it was 2017. I was just getting really bored with what I was doing with with tech and just the trajectory of like my career. I was just honestly bored and kind of burnt out. And that was obviously, like, if you look at 2017, that's when things got really kind of crazy in the ICO boom, and so there was a lot of attention to it. And so I started kind of looking into crypto, but I think because Coinbase was so overrun, I wasn't able to get into the madness for a while, which actually served me kind of well if you think about it. But from there, I started to be like, who should I be watching? What should I be getting into? And I ran into, I went and sat with an old boss of mine, and he was like, you should get into crypto. Like, definitely. I was like, how the hell am I going to get into crypto? I'm just like a sales guy. I'm not, I'm not an engineer. I'm not technical all that much. And he was like, you just got to figure out how to do it and, find some way into crypto. And so started going to meetups. I live outside of Boston, so I started going to some meetups in Boston and meeting folks, and ran into, as fate would have it, ran into another ex-co-founder of a project that I worked for in the past. And that was actually Derek Yu, who is my boss and CEO at PureStake. And so he was starting kind of an infrastructure company, and which is PureStake. And I was like, do you want to just like take the leap and see where it goes? And my wife was cool enough that she was like, yeah, you're miserable. You hate what you're doing. I know you really want to get into this, and you've been into it for a little while now. Like, you should, do it. So took the leap, and I've been with Derek kind of from the start of the company as one of the original kind of employees. And then when he came up with Moonbeam and the concept of what we wanted to build with Moonbeam, it was kind of a natural fit for me to kind of work hand in hand with him to start building the ecosystem. And then as it grew, we brought on more folks, and so we're just doing now we're doing pure ecosystem stuff around Moonbeam.
I love that. And as understated as you may want to come across, I know you guys are doing some amazing things over at Moonbeam and Moonriver, and definitely don't want to understate how cool that is. And so, yeah, I would really love to understand, for the folks who are not familiar with Moonbeam and Moonriver, like let's do the crash course, the 101 of like, what exactly are y'all doing? What are you building? And like, what is it exactly?
Sure. To get folks kind of up to speed with Polkadot in general, I think, if you look at like 2019, 2020, folks started really thinking about, okay, like, I think that Ethereum has started to kind of get, outpaced from a user perspective, and the gas fees and the transaction speeds. And so I think you started seeing some of these new projects, kind of come to light, whether it was Solana or Algorand that were talking about, solving this blockchain trilemma of, speed, security, and I forget what the third one was.
Scalability, I think.
Scalability, that's what it was. But it really started this like new wave of L1s kind of coming to market with kind of their own kind of shape and kind of take on the market. And so when we were, doing a lot of infrastructure at PureStake, we were thinking, okay, like, this is great, but what do we want to do to expand from here? And we started exploring ecosystems. And so we started getting engaged with Polkadot. We were like, wow, this ecosystem's amazing. There are a ton of people here who are building, and like, there were no tokens or anything at that point. It was just like pure that they wanted to, like, they believed in the vision of this multi-chain future that Polkadot was really working on and building. And so we started kind of pushing, all our chips in and started doing a lot more with Polkadot. And going back to how I started this, rant is Ethereum. And so Derek, our founder, kind of put this spin on things where he was like, look, I think the EVM that Ethereum created is really what developers know today. And using Solidity is really what the majority of the engineers in crypto understand how to work with. And so what if, like, we took this concept of this multi-chain ecosystem that Polkadot is building, and what if we just built like the Ethereum compatible, chain here? And so that's really where it came from, was like, we just went full into like, let's build a developer platform that looks and feels like Ethereum. Obviously, it's faster, it's more scalable, it has cheaper gas fees, but it still enables all, like, 95% of the developers in crypto who understand Solidity to be able to build an application on top of Moonbeam. And so that's really what we've gone out and built, is this Ethereum-like, capability that's built into Polkadot now as its own parachain. And so we are our own layer one that hooks into this Polkadot shared security model, so that, in this wider ecosystem of Polkadot, that's really our core competency, is just being this Ethereum compatible platform, so that teams that, maybe they've deployed something on Ethereum or BSC or Avalanche, they can take that same code base and deploy it to Moonbeam, and now they have, an anchor in the Polkadot system as well. And so we've got some teams that are already kind of established and are looking to go into this multi-chain vision of, I started on Ethereum, now I have an outpost on Avalanche, BSC, Polygon, you name it, if they have an EVM. And so we wanted to be that for Polkadot. But now what we're starting to see is this other, more what I'd call like native ecosystem starting to grow around Moonbeam, where folks are saying, look, I want to have a new team, a new token, a new whatever, and I'm going to build it natively on Moonbeam or Moonriver. And so that's really what we've built today.
That's amazing. So you really saw the need for cross-chain expansion and people wanting to build in the same way that they built on Ethereum, but they wanted to take advantage of the Polkadot ecosystem. And so you basically built like an on-ramp onto Polkadot, and without terribly much difficulty, right? It seems to be very, very easy to kind of make that move, because it's like very simple, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's you kind of hit it on the head. That's generally how we kind of describe it. It's like we always had this idea of just being kind of like the easy on-ramp to Polkadot, and that, like, we believe in the multi-chain future, and we think Polkadot's the best place because of, the interoperability that Polkadot enables between these parachains. But for teams to come in, not every team wants to build a parachain, and the framework that Polkadot uses is called Substrate, which enables teams to build your own blockchain, which makes it a lot easier than 2-3 years ago. But it's still a big undertaking. You have to have Rust developers, you've got to have DevOps, and so I think a lot of the teams that we talked to, especially in the early days, they were very interested in Polkadot and they believed in the multi-chain vision, but they're like, I don't want to build my own blockchain. Like, it just doesn't make sense for me right now. And so that's really being that easy on-ramp to say, okay, take the code you have in Ethereum, deploy it, it'll compile very quickly. It'll look and feel exactly the same. And we also did a bunch of work around, like, going out and saying, okay, what tools are needed? And it was, okay, well, we use Truffle, we use Hard Hat, we use Waffle. We went and integrated all of those into it, so the developers could show up and be like, this entire tool stack that I know how to work with. Oh yeah, you guys already support it. That's great. And even on kind of the deeper side of that, it's things like Etherscan. We have an Etherscan deployment, so you can that same tool is called Moonscan for Moonbeam and Moonriver. That was like critical. It was things like the graph-based subgraphs for indexing data. We went and integrated with them, and so we've always taken this approach of like, if we're going to build a platform, we better have all of the tooling that teams in Ethereum know how to use and want to use. So when they show up, it's just as easy as they can think about. They're like, oh, you have all the stuff that I've already worked with. Great, let's do it. They can build quickly and kind of get deployed as seamlessly as possible.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, because we covered Moonbeam. I think we have a good understanding, but let's talk about Moonriver and why it was important for you to have both.
Sure. So, I'll give a little context around like the Polkadot ecosystem again. So Polkadot, when they were Parity, when they were building Polkadot, I think they came to the realization that there were just features and things that they wanted to be able to test under real economic conditions that may not be as great as what would be on Polkadot itself. And so the idea for Kusama came up, and some folks will say it's a test net, but it's an asset bearing, like there's real money associated with it. There's a token, and that it's tradable, all that kind of stuff. And so it's not like a pure test net in that sense, but the way that Parity built it was they wanted to be able to test things under real economic conditions. And so they came up with this idea for Kusama. And so when we were building and thinking about Moonbeam, we were like, well, we think that's an amazing idea because we're going to have new features that are going to have real impacts to what we're building, and we can test them on Moonbase Alpha, which is our true test net. But we wanted another place where we could try new features, where we could roll out code first, and try more cutting edge experimental things before they went to Moonbeam. And so that's where Moonriver came from, was kind of our community led. This is where new things start. This is where they get deployed first before they go up to Moonbeam. And it's kind of taken a life of its own, where we have teams that are building on Moonriver that are like, I'm not going to go to Moonbeam. This is what I need. I have my community here. These are my people, and I'm going to stay here. That we have other teams that say, I'm going to just go to Moonbeam. That's fine. But the majority are like, well, there's a big community on Moonriver and there's a big one on Moonbeam. And sure, there's some overlap, I'm sure, but there are projects that are going to be specific. So shoot, I'll have 2 deployments. I'll just go to Moonriver and Moonbeam. So it's kind of taken a life of its own. But for us, it's always been important to make sure that we can have this process of rolling out features and code that when it gets to Moonbeam, it's been tested, across the board, all the way under, economic conditions up the stack.
That's so cool. So you can basically test on a true test net, then you can test on like a quasi test net, and then you can roll it out to the, the fully fledged main thing with Moonbase, Moonriver, and Moonbeam.
Yeah, so I mean, like if you look at like the Cosmos ecosystem, for example, right? When there's like large upgrades that are happening, they've had to roll out these like incentivized test nets. You've got to get validators to come in and spin up this whole thing, and you've got to add attribute money to it so people can do it. But I think Parity looked at that and was like, we're just going to need this forever. Like we're never, this thing's never going away. We're just going to need a place where we can make sure that anything before it hits Polkadot has been vetted and kind of vetted under real economic conditions, and that's where Kusama came from. So yeah, I mean that's really the piece is you either do it on like a case by case, and you spin up this whole incentivized test net, or you just have a Moonriver deployment like we do, where it's always going to be there. We're always going to need a place, and so for us, it's critical to have this Moonriver and Moonbeam deployment, and it certainly creates more work, certainly from like an ecosystem perspective, just helping teams get deployed and what's going where and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's a good problem to have.
Absolutely. And speaking of working with teams and like building for teams, I'm really fascinated by the idea of acquiring your initial users and getting some traction early on, and then moving from there. When you were building, did you have like a specific, I know the idea was to be an on-ramp to Polkadot, make it really easy to go from Ethereum to Polkadot. But even within that, was there a niche or something that you all wanted to target first that you thought these people are the most in need? This is kind of the lowest hanging fruit of like, and maybe not, but maybe you could tell the story of like the early adoption and how things really got fired up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of evolved over the past like year and a half, 2 years that we've been kind of at it. And I think the first use case that we started to see traction with was DeFi, and I think it came back to a lot of those like DeFi applications in 2020 and early 2021 were probably they were probably the most aggressive to go multi-chain because they realized there were audiences in different ecosystems that they weren't tapping into, and they could benefit from not just the audience but also like cheaper gas fees and things like that, where there was a real need for them to go multi-chain. But we did see probably 6 months ago, we started to really see a lot more NFT teams start to pop up about, well, like, cool, you've got your own ecosystem here. Like we could do some interesting NFTs that would kind of suit your ecosystem, and also gas fees continue to kind of be difficult to manage on the Ethereum side, especially if it's not you're not one of the Bored Ape Yacht Club or something where you're dropping $100,000. You don't care about gas fees at that point. But if you're trying to buy an NFT that's $100, $200, and you're spending 20, 40, $50, I mean, that eats into that eats into anything that you're gonna interact with. So we started seeing a lot of NFT teams start to reach out, and then I'd say over the past like 3 or 4 months, we've seen a lot of gaming teams that are coming to market, and they need to find homes. They need to figure out like what makes sense for them. And so we definitely saw this shift over the past like year and a half, 2 years, where it really started in DeFi, but NFTs and gaming have started to kind of creep up in terms of how many teams we're talking to, and the type of teams that are kind of coming across our plate.
I love that. And that was actually the next thing I was going to ask. So I feel like you read my mind a little bit. But yeah, as far as these NFT groups and the gaming groups and these teams and building for them and really what they're looking for, what are they really looking for? Like when what are kind of the most important things that these projects need to be thinking about, and then they're asking you about coming to the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think from on one side of things, it's really from like a technical standpoint. I mean, there just needs to be like the infrastructure there to support them. So, what that looks like for NFT and gaming, especially the play to earn, is there needs to be, marketplaces where the NFTs can get listed, and there needs to be, a couple of them where they can feel like they're getting pretty broad exposure and things along those lines. We need to be able to support as many different, wallet types as we can, because I mean, folks generally want to interact where their users kind of live. From a gaming perspective, you start looking at what kind of throughput you can have, and how many transactions they're looking to push, and whether it's they want to have like gasless transactions built into it or something along those lines, where you can kind of lower that barrier to entry for your users. And then things like VRFs, oracles start to come into play, and some of the more some of those specific use cases. But the cool thing about what we've built is that I think that the fact that our EVM and all the integrations we have, like if it's a gaming company, they've generally already said, okay, like EVM's the way for me. And so a lot of the infrastructure that they need from like a builder's perspective, it's just there. And so, I mentioned some of them earlier, whether it's, Truffle or, Hard Hat or Remix, like all that stuff's already supported. I think Open Zeppelin went live today with their Defender product for their smart contract. So, I mean, it really comes back to like, I think most of the tooling that teams need, we have, because generally when you're building a crypto-based game, you start with, okay, let's go look at Ethereum. Okay, maybe it's too expensive, slow, whatever it is. Now let's go look elsewhere. But all of the tooling has already been kind of built there on Ethereum, and so that's what we're kind of mirroring for them.
I love that. So when you're seeing, and obviously, you're really big in the biz dev space, so I would imagine you're kind of seeing who's coming over and who's being the most successful from a gaming perspective. So you really have an interesting insight, I believe, into like what's working and what's not as far as gaming and NFTs go. What are some of the lessons that game projects need to know, gamers need to know? Like, what can we learn from everything that you're seeing, from both people that are doing it really well, and people that have made some mistakes. What do we need to learn from this?
Sure. That's a good question. I mean, I think that it really is like a case by case basis in terms of like community is going to drive everything. And so, I think that you can come out and, you can say like, we're going to be the best game ever. And it's going to have, all of these features and look at these graphics and it's amazing and, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, like, it really comes back to like, can you build a community around the game that you're building? And so I think making sure that like you've got the pieces and the building blocks in place, whether it's Discord or Telegram, or you're doing things and getting on podcasts like this where you can get broad exposure for what you're building and try and show value that like people may not be thinking about. So that you can start to really drive eyeballs and drive users, and not in like a shilly way, but just in a way that's like, look, this is transformative. This is really cool. This is why. And you can drive that engagement because even on like, traditional Web 2 tech space, it's not always like the best thing that wins. Generally, it comes back to like, were you able to like market yourself well? Were you able to drive users that got excited about what you do? And could you like distill your message down that people would like give a shit? And so, I mean, like that's the biggest thing. And whether it's gaming or NFTs, DeFi's, it doesn't matter. It's like, start with community. Like, what can you do to get your community, engaged, get people excited, drive FOMO? And then you can start to drive like, okay, now we're gonna open up 6 months from now and get all these users going because they've been waiting. They've been like really chomping at the bit and excited to get involved. That's I probably went on a bit of a tangent for you, but that's the thing that I think we're seeing right now with any project is like you've got to build an organic community, and there are good ways to do it, but like make sure that while you're in the hiring process, like don't throw out people like myself, the BD people who may not be super technical, but can drive value in other ways for your project. And on the marketing and community side, like you need to make sure you invest there, because at the end of the day, like if you can't get users to come use the amazing thing you're building, then what are you doing?
That's right. Shout out to the non-technical people. Let's go.
I joke that I'm like, I had a boss, and can I swear on this, or is that frowned upon?
Of course you can swear. Actually,
Okay.
This is the perfect time I got to tell you this because it just came into my mind. My grandfather always used to say, you know why you should never curse? Because it's just a crutch for ignorant motherfuckers. So yeah, let it loose.
I'm gonna have to use that one day. I mean, look, when I was just in like Web 2 tech space, like I had an old sales boss look at me one day and he was like, Nate, you're in sales. And so what that means is if you ever look around a room and you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong fucking room. And I was like, oh man, that's fantastic. But I'm saying that because I think that like there are just like soft skills that I think folks that may not be technical can bring to projects. And so like don't undersell some of those soft skills. And community is just like massive. And so invest in people, good people that are on the marketing and the BD side who have ideas about how do we get exposure, how do we drive eyeballs, how do we get people excited, and again, not in like a shilly way, but just in a way that can drive organic like love for what you're doing. And Derek, my CEO and I, we've been doing this for 2 years, getting people excited about Moonbeam, and we've got this massive ecosystem that's grown around it, and we have an amazing marketing team who focus on community, and it's so just putting that out there, because that is something that we do see some teams show up and they're like, it's the best A, B, or C. And like, well, like, do you have a community at this point? Like, oh, well, we'll get there. We ought to build it first. Like, well, you got to do it at the same time. So it's just a word of advice.
Absolutely. And I will say, just interfacing with the folks that are managing your different accounts, just from my experience, everybody was a total gem. I mean, y'all are so nice. Really a pleasure to work with just on the media side. It's really it was really nice and refreshing.
Shout out to Katie and Kathy, who I think put this together for us. I think we're strong on all fronts, but our marketing team certainly is, they're top notch, and that's always good feedback that the folks who are working with folks like yourself on these kind of outbound messaging things to see the value in having folks who are responsive, respectful, and just great overall.
All right, Katie and Kathy, shout out to you all. Yeah, totally. They rock. So let's talk a little bit about this community building aspect, because it's critical. It's hypercritical. You can have the best thing in the world, but if nobody's using it, it doesn't fucking matter. So how have you all both on the ecosystem side, the Moonbeam Moonriver side, how have y'all really driven the community and built that up? And then I also want to ask about how you're seeing the different games and NFT projects on the platform do it as well. But let's first tackle how y'all have really done that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to like distilling your message and like what you're doing, and then really drive that point home in terms of like you gotta find your niche, and then think about it from like a marketing perspective, like who's your audience, who are the people that you're targeting, who you're going after. And so, for us, I sometimes joke that we were a little spoiled, because like when we came in, we had the Polkadot ecosystem that was already like thriving and growing, and there were a bunch of people there who really cared about it. And what we kind of layered on top of that was like, oh great, now like you have an EVM and an Ethereum deployment where it's really easy to get deployed, and you can do a bunch of cool stuff here. And so I do joke that we were kind of like spoiled in that way, because we kind of came into an ecosystem that was already grown. But at the same time, like I think that even teams that are building on top of Moonbeam right now, like we now have a big ecosystem that they can kind of go talk to. And so, I think it's just focusing on like focusing on your message, figure out like who your target audience is, and like where are they engaged? Are they engaged on Discord? Are they in Reddit? Are they there are a whole ton of places that you can go look and be like, well, my demographic fits into A, B, and C, so I'm gonna, whether it's ads or something along those lines, but it's more like, let's go get involved in these little sub ecosystems with, a community lead who can start talking about what you're doing. And are there complementary pieces of technology that make sense to try and co-market with, that like you're going to integrate with A, B, or C? Okay, great. Can you do some marketing around that? Because they have an ecosystem that you can then drive off of. And so, we're pretty strict about, doing any kind of co-marketing, because we generally want to see like something deployed and live. And so, we take an approach that like we want anything that gets, a retweet or something along those lines is live, because we do feel like the people in our ecosystem, they want to go engage with it. They want to go use it. And so that's kind of how we've done it. And even for our ecosystem, that's how we generally work with folks, is like, let's focus on your message. Like, who are the people that are really going to care about it? And let's work together on some kind of, marketing campaign that highlights some of the great things you're working on. And then we have a couple different programs. One's called the Moon Builders program, and then one's called Moonbeam Universe, where we can help highlight teams that are active and building in the Moonbeam ecosystem, whether it's Moonbeam or Moonriver, that we can help drive eyeballs to some of these projects. And it is kind of funny, like I've seen it be successful on both sides. We've had some teams who've been very like vocal about what they're building early on, and are like a couple months out from going live, but they're building a bunch of hype. The other side, we have I can't say what the team name is, but like they're going like much more like just pure guerrilla tactics. Like they have kind of like this ecosystem that they're building very slowly through kind of like influencers and showing things off like bits and pieces. And they're going after more of like this club feel, where it's like this cool like kid club that folks don't really know about, and that one day it's going to kind of go live, turn on, and people are going to be like, what the hell is this? Where did this come from? This thing is amazing. But they're doing this much more like I don't know. I guess guerrilla tactic would be the way that I would describe how they're going after building like a smaller, very curated ecosystem that one day will explode, but they want to be very much in stealth until they're like fully ready to just go full out.
I love that. So it seems like first figure out who your audience is and who exactly you're building for, to where you know when they see what you have, they're going to love it. They can't imagine life without it. And then go hang out where they are, whether it be putting a community manager there or somebody to just go start talking and engaging with them, whether it be a subreddit or some section of crypto Twitter or some Discord channel or a couple of them, so on and so forth. I also heard you mention different ads, potentially using those. And then really also thinking about co-marketing. So if you're integrating with a different partner or you're building something that's really valuable to another group, reach out to them and try to figure out how you could cross promote together, and then just try to take advantage really of whatever ecosystem you're building within, from not like take advantage of them, but like work with them to like serve that community even better. Did I capture it all?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think that the ads one, that's more of like a web two approach, but like I think there are ways, whether it's like sponsorships of like events or crowdcasts or things where you can get kind of like the logo and brand out there, like Eat Denver and things that are coming up. Like those may be like the huge events, but there are local events you can do too that you can kind of put on, or you can work with your locals. I would say like most big cities at this point probably do have some kind of crypto meetup. Get in front of them, talk about what you're doing. See if you can get like a speaking slot for the monthly meetup or whatever it is. Those are just some other ways from like an advertising perspective you can kind of get out there.
Love it. And so that seems like it's applicable to both what you all did as well as what some of the more successful, like your ecosystem is doing. Is there anything to just kind of close that loop on what some of the folks building on Moonbeam and Moonriver? Is there anything else that they should be thinking of as far as really building community and growing community?
No, I mean, I think I've hit on most of it. I mean, I think it's really just goes back to like, figure out like who your audience is and who's going to care about what you're building, and then figure out the best way to get in touch with them and make sure that they stay engaged. So, yeah, I would say that's probably the marketing aspect of it really comes down to that. That's going to help just drive community if you have the right message and you're targeting the right audience. That should put you in a good place to succeed.
Love it. So let's talk a little bit about what you see coming down the pipeline, as far as the gaming sector is concerned. So like, what are you seeing as the future of crypto gaming? Like, where are we going? Crypto gaming, the metaverse, where are we going? What's going to happen? And what are some benchmarks that we're going to see along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I will fall in my sort of bit here and say like I'm probably not the most well versed in terms of like all of the gaming things. I mean, I can talk to what we've seen so far and where I think the trends are going. I mean, I do think that right now there are a lot of big studios that I think have had their eyes kind of opened to how valuable like crypto based games are, where you can start integrating NFTs and things like that. And so right now, I know that there are a bunch of very high quality teams that are closing fundraisers and and things along those lines, where it's going to take probably 6 to 12 months before you'll see some of those kind of go live. But there are other awesome games that we're seeing live today. There's one on Moonriver called Moonsama that they've figured out that the instead of building their own game, what they did was they created all these NFTs that then can be ported into Minecraft. And so they just leaned into, well, people like kids and people love Minecraft. So like, why don't we use one of these private servers where we can just import these graphics, and you have to own the NFT to be able to do it. But I mean, like the amount of engagement that they've gotten is amazing, and they didn't even build the game. They didn't have to. Microsoft owns Minecraft. It's a hardened and tried and true game where now they've just layered on these NFTs that people now can go find and buy and get into. So like I think those are some of the really cool things that I'm seeing right now, and I think it's genius what the founder Donnie has done. And I think you'll start to see more and more things layer on top of traditional gaming. And so whether it's hosting tournaments where there could be crypto engaged in some way, whether it's you win NFTs or whether there's ERC20s tied into it, but like there are like SDKs coming out, they'd be able to like layer on top of traditional games. And so I think that whether it's on the traditional side or whether it's really on the true like crypto full on like gaming side, you're going to see more and more from an NFT perspective start to pop up over the next like 6 to 12 months, because there are a ton of amazingly talented teams who've been raising for the past 6 months and are building now that I think are going to be coming to market here with some pretty cool innovative games.
Yes, that's gonna be so freaking fun. I can't wait. I can't wait. I really cannot wait until we have a surplus of fantastic games that are integrated with crypto or NFTs in some way, because really, like, I don't see legacy games and crypto games and the future of gaming being competitors, because we're all at the end of the day in the gaming space. It's just how you choose to skin the cat. And 50, 100 years down the road, like, there will still be games that are not at all tied to crypto in any way, shape, or form. I expect more of the games that are for little kids to be definitely not crypto, because there's just no need for that. Maybe it could be on chain just because it's some sort of cheaper, better way to do it, but there's no crypto aspect of it. More of like, more focused on the blockchain side. But yeah, I think that's going to be probably the first wave also, is like the hybrid stuff of this really interesting just kind of collision of crypto, blockchain, traditional gaming, and then like a lot of excitement all bundled in, and everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. Who do you think are the folks that are going to win in that collision? Like, who are the ones? What are they going to do? Maybe not specific names, but like the ones that are going to win and be the most successful. What are they going to do differently than everybody else?
It's a good question. And I think that I can't imagine that the traditional big gaming companies aren't gonna, like, I know they're already, some of them are looking at doing their own, or maybe they're being like they're investing in some projects, but like I can't see them sitting on the sidelines and saying, nah, this isn't going to impact my business. I mean, I think you're going to see every big gaming shop out there is either going to buy a team that's building something today and kind of fold them in, or might buy a couple, because I just think that there's too much going on. Like the horse has left the barn. Like, it's not going back anytime. It's never going to happen. And so, I mean, I think it would be crazy to not see some of the big names kind of step into this and really help take that forward. But I think even going back to some of our earlier discussions, I think the folks who are going to be successful are the ones who are good at driving a community. It doesn't matter how amazing your game is. I think you've got to figure out who your users are and how do you drive community. And so you can look at what Axie has done, and they figured out that the Philippines was a great place that had kind of an underserved audience in terms of like folks that were willing to just play this all day and make a bunch of crypto on it. And you've got 3 people in the same house playing Axie all day because it pays bills better than getting a day job. And so, like, but again, what's that come back to? They figured out that, like, who's their community, and they figured out this kind of niche, and they leaned heavy into it. And I'm sure they have a ton of community leads that were kind of like, hey, this the Philippines could be pretty interesting. And you start building and getting people engaged. 1 tells 2, 2 tells 4, 4 tells 8, and by the time you know it, you've got this massive ecosystem, because this specific niche worked really well for them, and you're kind of off and running from there. So I think it's the big gaming shops, I think, are going to get if they're not already involved, I think they're all going to get off the sidelines at some point. But then the ones that aren't are building games today that may not be backed by some of these big games, if they can figure out the best way to engage an underserved audience and find a community that they can really get engaged, I think they'll be very successful as well.
Love that. So I know we're getting kind of close to time here. Just have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
I want to kind of get your take on the rise in popularity of both a little bit of the tech, but more so the narrative of layer twos and layer ones, and just how are you thinking about that? How are y'all preparing for that? And what do you kind of see as the realistic, most probable outcome of, where, what that's going to end up as far as like where are users going to transact, and where are we really going to live as far as blockchains go?
I mean, that's kind of the $1 trillion question is like what's going to be the most successful way to interact with the blockchain. And I think that the layer twos are, Arbitrum and Optimism have kind of had their they starting, what was that, like July, August when they launched. I mean, they've gotten traction. But I think you'll start to see some of the zero knowledge stuff really kind of come to light again with the team at ZK Proof or ZK Sync, and I am super interested in kind of where that goes. And so like I do think that like some of the gaming use cases that need this like massive amount of throughput and are focused on being like you're paying like Madden or whatever, but it's on a blockchain. Like they're gonna need something that probably has that kind of throughput. So I do think games are a good use case for it. But I think that like it's ultimately gonna come back to like who's using it and what's the community look like. I hate going back to just like community, but like if no one else is using it, then what's it good for? If it's just transacting for a game, well, the cool thing is like that's what Polkadot can do, where you can come be your own parachain, build your own blockchain if you're a game, and you can control everything from soup to nuts. And so like I do think that the layer twos will be interesting for folks that are like wanting to be on ETH mainnet or something along those lines, or be like kind of tied to Ethereum. But in the Polkadot space, I think we spoke to a team. I won't add them. I think they're still in stealth, but we spoke to a team that's just building like a game-specific platform on Polkadot, and there's a couple that have already gone live, I think. But these specifically focused on like we're going to kind of have like an integrated L2 because we're a parachain. We can do that, and but for them, they can control everything down to like the last minute detail because they're building their own blockchain. But they're doing it on Polkadot because now you've got this, all the NFTs that are getting created. Okay, well, maybe they want to get to Moonbeam's NFT marketplace. They'll be able to do that natively. And so there's like all these really cool use cases for Polkadot that can tie into, gaming L2s, where you can, just specialize in one specific thing. But because you're on Polkadot, now you have this broader ecosystem that you can natively interoperate. So you don't have to just use bridges or anything along those lines to move assets. And you can just focus on what you do well.
I love that. So seems like we still need to pay attention to community and see what the people are using. I love that. I love that answer. Okay, so last two questions here. I want to kind of mix it up a bit. What do you think is I don't know what the opposite of hopium is, but kind of I want to know like your biggest piece of hopium idea, and then the opposite of that, whatever that is, like the biggest threat to us right now in crypto gaming, the metaverse, and then the biggest piece of hopium that we can hold on to. And if we're seeing a little bit of red, we can kind of turn to this for some comfort.
I mean, I would say the biggest threat is just like end user friction. That's not just for gaming, but I mean, that's just for anything crypto. I mean, like the wallet experience and being able to like interact quickly with games, that you have to have all these, you got to have a wallet plugin to get a wallet. You've got to go set it up. You've got to go buy a bunch of crypto, put it on there. You have to store your account and keys somewhere. Like, I mean, maybe the younger generation, like us, are fine doing that, but there are gamers who would look at that and be like, I don't want to have that. And so I do think like the end user friction from just being able to actively work with these things, I think is still, I think it's getting there. And I hope it's not a threat like long term, but I think right now that's just a practical reality of where the technology is. And I guess that could be like some of the hope stuff, or like the hopium, if you will, is that like if you look at something like NBA Top Shot, I know it's not in the gaming space, but at the same time, like if you go and sign up for that, like it doesn't feel like crypto. It doesn't look like crypto. You know, it's just it feels like you're just on a normal website and you're buying something, and it's, you know, you kind of have your gallery or whatever they call it. But at no time do you necessarily feel like you're like engaging with crypto, which is really cool. And another beautiful OPM would just be like, I think we are still so early in the, you know, in the, not just in the gaming, but in crypto as well. I think, but for gaming, it's even earlier. I mean, all this stuff is just happening over the past year. You've started to see some of these games start to take off. So like for gaming specifically, I think you are at like the tip of the spear in terms of, you know, the technology, as well as the active audience, because I just think that there's a huge audience out there, and as long as you can mirror the two or couple the two with huge audience and good user experience, I think you're going to be off and running over the next couple of years from a gaming perspective.
Love it. Nate, you're the man. Thank you for everything you do for the crypto space, and also for sharing some of your time today. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm certainly not the man, but I appreciate the compliments.
Oh, you're totally the man. I'm sticking with it. But really, thank you. And to everybody watching and listening, thank you all. I will see you all